What up, y'all? It's Snowblunt Talk, back again with the late night vibes. And you know what? Let's just jump straight into it. So, if you clicked on this video, you probably know the novel Things Fall Apart. And if you don't know about that novel, here's a quick synopsis, right? The novel is basically about the story of a couple generations, well, one main generation, right? Of a Nigerian family, living in pre-colonial times, and it basically chronicles their life before colonization, before contact with the British, and the traditions and the worship and the methods of worship and the methods, all of their life before, and then as the British start coming and integrating their Christianity. That's kind of like the plot of the novel. It just follows a Nigerian clan start to experience colonization. And if that interests you and you actually want to go read it, I suggest you click off this video and go read it, because I'm going to be getting into some spoilers in this video. But if you're still watching, you probably have read the novel. And if you haven't read the novel and you just want to hear me talk and yap, first of all, thank you. Second of all, I'm going to get to the generalized point of the video, but if you're not interested in reading, keep watching. This novel, I was reading it, and the ending was so profound to me. Like, that was the first time in a long time I've read a book, and when it ended, I was just like, wow, right? Because basically what happens is you have the main character, Okonkwo, who's this very, very powerful warrior, right? He's this very powerful warrior, and the thing about his power and his strength, it comes from the fact that his father basically died with no honor. His father was looked at as a weak man who owed a lot of people money. He couldn't stand the sight of blood, which in those times, in that setting, is the ultimate sign of weakness. And he was basically considered a woman, right? He was a man that was considered a woman. He was very, very dishonored, and he died. When he died, he just went away. They didn't have a proper burial. They just put his body in the forest because he was just looked at as subhuman. He was looked at as pretty much worthless. Now, Okonkwo, his son, resented that lack of power, that perception of worthlessness, so much so that the novel chronicles his feats in wrestling and great yam harvests, and he does all these great things because of the deep-rooted fear of ending up like his father. And that's why the ending stuck out to me so much, because at the end of the novel, this is by the time the white settlers have started to integrate, and they get in a disagreement, and Okonkwo kills one of the fellow people of his clan that are repping for the Christians. And by that point, the people around him are like, whoa, dude, what did you do? By this point, his clan's changed a little bit. Okonkwo's so warrior mind focused, he doesn't realize it. And he just kills, this Christian guy. And when he realizes the weight of what he's done, and that he can't, brute force his way through it, that there are forces more powerful than him here at stake, the novel pretty much abruptly ends where we find out, and it's genius the way Chinua Achebe writes it, because you don't find out till the very last few pages Okonkwo's true fate, which is, watching the algorithm, he deletes himself from a tree. This powerful warrior who worked his whole life to be looked at as the king of the hill, is now from a tree, and he ain't an apple. It is not the time for jokes. But you get what I'm saying. It's shocking, it's abrupt, and it really made me ponder, right? It really made me think, because it reminded me of another person who eerily ended up in the same fate, Anthony Bourdain. He has this quote I once saw on Instagram. He was like, every day I realize there's a guy inside me that just wants to smoke weed and eat Cheetos and watch cartoons all day. And every day I aspire not to be that guy. And it had me thinking, right? Because Anthony Bourdain and Okonkwo ended up in the same fate, because what was their motivation? their fear of ending up as a person they didn't want to be, their fear of ending up as a person they perceived as weak. And the reason why it affected me so deeply is because I'm starting to get out of the cycle where I am primarily motivated by not wanting to turn out a certain way, right? Because everybody, we have our off seasons. You get to adolescence and you might be kind of slow to reach certain milestones. You might not show too much proclivity toward anything. You might not feel motivated to do a lot of things, or you might not be motivated to pursue some things. And when you're in high school, sometimes the pressure comes down on you. And it's not too long before that talk starts of people being like, oh, what are you gonna do? You're gonna be a good for nothing person. You get this idea that if you don't, shaping up, that you're basically gonna be a bum, you're gonna be a nobody, right? And it's frightening and it's scary because of how much shame people cast on that. So much so that, like me in the past, your whole motivation in life now is to not be that guy. And I'm starting to realize how toxic that is, because let Gerard Carmichael, we didn't know he was chaotic back when he said this, but on the interlude to Igor, I got it right here. But on the interlude to Igor, or an interlude, he says, exactly what you run from, you end up chasing. And I'd phrase it a little differently in this context. I'd say the person you end up running from catches up to you. And it's crazy because your whole motivation could have not even rested on the fact that you don't want to be a guy. It's the fact that you have your foundation based on negativity. That's what just draws you right back into that negativity that you were trying to escape so badly. Because I've started to realize that if you spend all your time, all your motivation is trying not to be the lazy person, you have no type of reference for who you actually want to be. All you're thinking about is what you don't want to be. And the thing about the subconscious mind, it doesn't tell the difference. If you keep on putting this image of this lazy bastard, and whether you're running from it or gravitating toward it, your subconscious mind at the end of the day is gonna keep associating you with that image. So much so that as far as you run from it, you're gonna smack right back into it. It's just like the picture of Dorian Gray. If you read that, Dorian Gray spends all his time evading old age just for the portrait that has all the age he's accrued from all of his sins kill him in the end. Whoever you don't want to be, whatever you're running from, ends up catching up with you in the end, and you can't stop it. And another thing I learned from Things Fall Apart is that there are forces greater than us at hand, and if you don't surrender, it doesn't matter, because they're gonna do what they do. Throughout the novel, right, Okonkwo, he was very stubborn to the point where one would say he disagreed with the gods. Those same gods in his culture that made it so the people who still respected him for what he did during his life, they wouldn't touch him after he did what he did to die. They wouldn't touch him because at the end of the day, they revered those spirits and those gods way more than they revered him, but he couldn't see that. And it just taught me how in life, as much as it's important to take action, as much as you have to take action to create the life you want, a lot of it is surrender. Because however hard you work for whatever you want, not only is it about having the right intentions, you can never really work too hard for something. If you're working too hard for something, I suggest you do something else. Now, working hard as a labor of love is a way different thing, right? I'm probably gonna wake up early tomorrow and edit this video together, you know what I'm saying? Put it together, get it out. And even though, everybody would rather basically metaphorically be a baby sucking on a pacifier, everyone would rather just be chilling. But this, for me, expressing my thoughts to this platform and seeing the reactions and having that, symbiotic relation between my audience and me, I love it, and I love it on a deeper level than I just enjoy the pleasure, the satisfaction of just lazing about doing whatever. Well, one thing I'm not going to do is kill myself coming up with video ideas because I don't believe in forcing things to happen. When you force things to happen, there's a certain threshold you pass where you're going against the universe. And one thing about going against the universe, that's a battle you're not gonna win. You're not gonna win. You're not going to. There are things higher than us at play, and most things that are out of our control will control our lives. So if, you know, all these examples taught me anything, it's number one, to live with who you are. All the fears, all the doubts, everything. The first step to self-improvement is self-acceptance. And that's why so many of the self-improvement community basically got stuck in a loop, never really went nowhere. Why? Because they'd have that same idea of, okay, I just have to not be a Jeffrey. Oh my God, I do not want to be a Jeffrey. And it's like, it's time we stop letting the trauma and the psychological turmoil of being a person that we're ashamed of make us go and do opposite things under the guise of doing something better, doing something improving. Because if you're constantly trying to run from this terrible archetype of who you think you are, you're not going to get any better. You're just going to be a whole other person that does these things and slip right back into that Jeffrey mind state. When what we all need to do is accept the Jeffrey within us before we make any accomplishments. Like, I'm not gonna be, like, I'm just making an example. I'm not gonna sit here and be a video game playing ass nigga, let somebody make me feel bad the next day. Okay, fuck video games, I'm a gym goer now. That's not going to stick, because what came naturally to me, I never showed compassion toward. Okonkwo in the book, if you've read it, he never showed compassion. He didn't even show compassion toward himself because he was so ashamed of the femininity his father showed, the passivity, the laziness, the, you know, emotional, artistic aspect. He was so ashamed of that, he wouldn't even let himself live. Literally, the fact he wouldn't let himself live caught up with him in the most brutal, literal way. Because at a certain point, he couldn't live with his decisions. Same with Anthony Bourdain. Now, I know his situation's a little different, but still, that mindset, that kind of really depressive lack mindset, often ends in that type of situation. Because there's a crucial lack of self-acceptance. There's a crucial, you realize, okay, maybe I would rather be at home eating Cheetos, watching cartoons. But you resent that about yourself. And I used to resent that about myself. Now, I accept it. I accept, you know what? It's human nature to not really want to do anything for some of us, you know, type B personalities, as they would say. It's human nature for that, but knowing that about myself and giving myself grace and compassion, that love I give myself empowers me to do things that are productive. Because I can see the value, I can see the value for me, I can see the value for the world. And because I've let, you know, my inner child, my instinctual self, I've given that person the space to breathe, given that person the compassion, instead of constantly, oh, you're gonna be a good for nothing, this, that, and this. No. Sometimes you in a little refractory period. And whatever you naturally gravitate toward, there's nothing, unless it's like murder or, you know, cheese pizza, that is a whole different conversation. But if you naturally gravitate toward playing video games and you want to be a more productive person, well, you can stop playing video games as much and cut them out. But the first step is acknowledging, hey, okay, look, I love video games. I love playing them, and that's just who I am. There's nothing wrong with loving video games, but I'd like to evolve. Just admitting to yourself that the habits that occur naturally to you that you might want to get rid of, that you some part of you is deeply attached and maybe even loves them, just admitting that to yourself and letting yourself know that to love video games, to love eating Cheetos and watching cartoons, to love whacking yo Peter to whatever the fuck, you're you're far from the first person to enjoy these things, and you're far from these things are made to give you dopamine, to be pleasurable. And if you know, really like doing that, it's designed for that to happen. But it's imperative you give yourself the grace and compassion to understand that although, yes, you can enjoy this from time to time, you can accept one part of your identity and allow those parts to grow. I've always noticed that whenever I accept certain things about my situation and I just come clean about it, the situation resolves itself. You know what I'm saying? Like, the first job I ever got, I was looking for jobs for like the whole month. Everyone around you is like, oh, I got a job here, the job search is hell on earth. But once I was starting to sit outside and meditate and be like, you know what, I'm a jobless ass nigga right now. I mean, okay, that's just where I'm at. Then things started happening. Because it's not about what your mind, your monkey brain, that anxious part of you, it's not about what that wants. Because you can mentally strain yourself into getting droplets of water, right? But if you just ease up your mind, accept your situation with your whole heart and soul and mind and being, those droplets of water turn into a faucet. And it's because you were the first one to pour into yourself, so naturally everything else has to pour into you. What you want out of life is a situation that you accept. And you can't get a situation that you accept until you accept the situation you're currently in. It's not about life giving you something you can finally say yes to. It's about saying yes to the life that's here right now, working with it, and moving forward. And moving forward with whatever you want to move forward with gets a lot easier when you take a good intake of wherever you're at. Because trust me, behind every person that desperately wants to be, you know, a god, a self-improvement G, you know, top G, behind everyone that wants to be like that is a scared little wounded child who feels like they don't deserve to be loved for being lazy or effeminate or liking to draw or watch cartoons. There's a deep part of you that feels like you don't deserve love and acceptance for just being drawn to things. And I'm here to tell you that that person within you that may like to do some degenerate things, before you move forward with your life and become a top G, you gotta tell that person, tell that inner child that it's okay. It's completely okay to be who you are. And when you realize it's okay to be who you are, that's when you can really genuinely and honestly start improving who you are. So yeah, things fall apart. It taught me that there are forces greater than us and we need to surrender to them when we need to surrender to them. It taught me that if you spend your whole life trying to run away from something, it'll catch up with you, and the farther you run from it, the heavier that catch up is gonna be. No tomatoes. Another thing it taught me is to never be too prideful. Never believe that your way is the way. Never believe that your way of being is the number one way of being, or that you'll always be the number one person. Never think you're too good for people, right? Because the main character, he thought he was the leader, he thought he was the big dog until he killed that nigga and then realized that people weren't on the page with him. You spend so much time trying to be number one, you don't even know the people you're being number one of. And how can you be a good leader if you don't know your people? You're not tapped in. So, you know, never be too invested in your story and what it means to you and how you come off to the people around you. Because more often than not, what you're gonna need to do is surrender, accept whoever you are, let go of yourself, and really tap in with the people around you. That's gonna get you a lot more peace than trying to be number one all the time, trying to be a winner because you think you're a loser deep down. Accept that you're a loser deep down, and then start to earnestly progress toward whatever you want, because now you're moving with love and compassion, and you realize you weren't even a loser to begin with. You was just a person on a part of a journey. And the thing about life, it's full of cycles. Time is very cyclical. Instead of thinking you're all the way on the left side and you have to go right, just take that drive and realize you're going in a circle. So there's no wrong direction, there's no right direction, there's only the direction. And once you let go, surrender, tap in, whatever you want to call it. Just let yourself go and let yourself breathe. You'll finally be able to align yourself with the natural cycle of life. Sometimes you'll be up, sometimes you'll be down. But as long as you can fully and completely accept wherever you're at with your whole heart, the ups and the downs, shit, they all gonna feel the same. And they all gonna basically mean nothing. But if this shit means nothing, give your heart the most recognition and fulfillment it can possibly get. Because that feeling of love is the paramount feeling in this realm. Thank you, and have a good night, or a good day, good afternoon, whenever you watching this. You know I love y'all. Peace.